Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Cici Inka Valia. So in this good occasion, I would like to share to you about the useful expression for discussion. As we know that in a group of discussion, there are a chairperson and the members. First, this is for the chairperson. If you are a chairperson, you can start your discussion with, before we start this footnote, if I said blah blah blah, you can fill up with the topic that you are discussing. Okay, let's start. The purpose of our discussion is blah blah blah. Let's discuss blah blah blah. If we talk about blah blah blah, it seems necessary to discuss blah 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 and decide which is the most and the least blah blah blah. Let me start with blah blah blah. Let's begin with blah blah blah. Let's discuss blah 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 first. First, we need to blah blah blah. Who would like to begin? Can you explain your point a little more clearly? Can we see what other people think about this? Who has not had a chance to speak yet? Is there any last comment on this point before we move on to the next one? So, we have two opposing arguments here. On the one hand, blah blah blah. On the other hand, blah blah blah. In other words, most of us think that blah blah blah. Can we draw any conclusion from what we have been saying? So, just that for the chairperson, let's we move for the members. If you are the members and you are want to giving your opinion, you can use, I think that blah blah blah. In my view or opinion, blah blah blah. As far as I can see or I'm concerned, blah blah blah. Surely, blah blah blah. The main reason for my opinion is blah blah blah. To my mind, blah blah blah. In fact, blah blah blah. To the best for my knowledge, blah blah blah. The way I see it, blah blah blah. If you ask me, blah blah blah. I'm not sure if blah blah blah. I'm not sure if blah blah blah. It is said or believed or known that blah blah blah. It is obvious that blah blah blah. It seems to me that blah blah blah. I have the or a feeling that blah blah blah. Well, I would say blah blah blah. You can take it from me that blah blah blah. If you ask me blah blah blah, it seems to me that blah blah blah. I think or feel or reckon or believe blah blah blah. If you want my opinion, blah blah blah. First of all, or to start with, I'd like to point out blah blah blah. There can be no doubt that blah blah blah. Nobody will deny that blah blah blah. Everyone knows blah blah blah. Let's get this clear first, blah blah blah. The point I'm trying to make is blah blah blah. I'm absolutely convinced that blah blah blah. The way I look at or see, it is this blah blah blah. Okay. Then if you want to giving an explanation, you can use, look, it's like this. The reason for this is blah blah blah. Just let me explain blah blah blah. Well, the thing is blah blah blah. What I mean is blah blah blah. The main problem is blah blah blah. Well, the reason is blah blah blah. Above all, we must keep in mind that blah blah blah. Okay, if you want to balancing arguments, you can use on the one hand blah 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 and the other hand blah blah blah. Some people say that blah blah blah, others believe that blah blah blah. It is said that blah blah blah, however, blah blah blah. And then if you want to asking questions about someone else's opinion or explanation, you can use, could you tell me blah blah blah? What's your opinion about blah blah blah? How do you feel about blah blah blah? What do you think about or of blah blah blah? Do you think or feel blah blah blah? May I ask you blah blah blah? Do you mean that blah blah blah? Do you agree? Do you share my point of view? What do you mean when you say blah blah blah? What do you mean by that? I don't fully understand. Can you give me some examples? Could you explain to me? Just tell me the reason why. I just don't see why or what or how. I didn't quite get that. Could someone please tell me blah blah blah? I don't really understand. Are you saying that blah blah blah? I beg your pardon. Excuse me, did you say that? And then if you want to agreeing and disagreeing, you can use I quite agree. I couldn't agree with you more. That's true or right. Exactly or precisely or right. Or certainly or definitely. I think so too. That's just my feeling or opinion. That's a very good or important point. Yes, of course, or definitely, or absolutely. That's exactly what I mean or say. I agree because blah blah blah. I strongly agree with you. I couldn't agree more. That seems very logical to me. I share your point of view. Yes, indeed. I agree completely or entirely. I entirely or completely agree with you on that. That's just it. You are quiet or so right. I don't think so either. That's just how I see it or feel about it too. You have got a good point here. Marvels. Yes, that's obvious. That's what I think. So do I or so am I. I don't think it's as simple as that. You may be right there. Yes, possibly, although blah blah blah. Yes, up to a point. Yes, in a way. Well, it depends. I see what you mean, but I think that's not the whole story. Yes, but there's also another aspect to consider. I'm afraid I can agree because I disagree with you. I'm afraid. I don't quite agree there. I'm not quite so sure or really. Do you really think so or believe that? Well, that's one way of looking at it. But you can't really mean that. I wouldn't say so. And then the last, if you want to summing up the discussion, you can use to sum up blah 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 blah, to conclude blah blah blah, to summarize blah blah. Taking everything into consideration blah blah blah, I can suggest the following order blah blah blah. Do you agree? I believe the most important is blah 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 and the least significant is blah blah blah. We have agreed on the following order blah blah blah. We have decided that number 1 is blah blah blah, number 2 is blah blah blah, and number 3 is blah blah blah. Okay? I think just that about the expression for discussion that I shared to you. I hope it can help you. Thank you so much for watching, and lastly, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.